Now, so let's say you do your outline, you know what you want to write, you got your plan, you sit down to write. What do you do? So I'm going to tell you to cast off most writing advice that you've heard because it's not good. Most of it is written by authors or writers, professional writers, trying to impress other professional writers. It's not actually helpful for someone like you who's not a professional writer who's just trying to write your memoir or trying to, finish your book. It's not good for you, right? Not morally bad. It just isn't effective. There's really only, I will tell you, there's only one rule of writing. Do what works for you, right? Now, I'm telling you, this is all best practices that we have learned coaching thousands of people just like you, like Quan, through this process and getting them through the process. So this all works. If it's not working for you, you want to try something else, cool. But this works. This is not theory. Right, we highly recommend use. So our process for writing, we call the scribe memoir algorithm. So if you look at the bottom of your outline, you're going to see this green thing. This is describing it exactly. So it's always going to be there for you. Let me go through though and walk you through each part of it. When it's time to write a story, there's just two questions you ask yourself. What happened? And what did I feel about it? That's it. And there's an optional one you can also do. So let's talk about that. First question, what happened? Now, generally, I put in the parentheses, what that mattered to you then or now. So this is not a Robert Caro style biography about Lyndon Johnson that's 4 volumes long and thousands of pages and has every detail about your life. No one cares, not even you. Like, I don't care what I ate for lunch 16 days ago. It's not really relevant to the full experience of my life. It's only relevant at lunch for one day. So that's why it's what happened that mattered to you, either then or now, okay? Now, but for this, I want you to really focus on the specific moments for each story as well. The actual memory, the thing that happened that brings you back into the emotion, right? Like I can remember a time, I had all kinds of interactions with my dad, but I remember one time, just because I was thinking about this the other day, that like my dad bought me like a blue blazer, and it was like my first nice blazer, and I didn't like it, or I didn't want it, and I put it on the bed, and he got all upset with me that I didn't hang it up and fold it, right? And I was a little kid then. I was like 6, and so it was a very intense sort of a thing for me. So like I'm not going to talk about everything else that happened that week. That's the thing I remember, right? That's the memory that brings me back into the emotion. That's the sort of detail that connects you with the emotion of the story, right? Not every detail. Leave out anything boring or mundane. And you want to write each chapter, each story from the perspective of who you were at the moment, right? You really want to talk about what happened at the moment, what you felt at the moment. You can also talk about what you feel now, but really make sure you talk about what happened in that moment. So like when my dad was yelling at me about the blazer, I felt small and powerless, which sucked. And then I also really remember thinking, like, why do you care about this blazer so much? Like, you don't even love me as a kid, like, but you love this jacket? Like, how does this make sense, right? I remember thinking that very clearly as like a 5-year-old. So I need to talk about that. Not now trying to rationally think, oh, well, this and that. I can talk about that after, but I really got to talk about that. That's the key. So what happened? And then how did you feel about it then or now? So with the blazer thing, how I felt was then I felt small and powerless and didn't understand why he cared so much about that when he didn't love me. Now I might feel a little differently about it, or I might have more sort of thing. But you see what happened? He yelled at me. How did I feel? Felt small and powerless. Pretty, and it's called an algorithm because an algorithm is basically a repeating program, right? So then what happened then? How did I feel about it? What happened then? How did I feel about it? You just keep going. Now, for some of the memories, hold on. So to get real clear, for the feelings, that's the meat of your memoir. When you're honest about what you really felt in those moments, that's what makes your memoir great. If you really want to use this memoir to get what you want, almost every single thing all of you want comes through being vulnerable and open and honest about your truth. All of it. Especially deep emotional work, especially revelations, especially letting emotions go, knowing yourself, all that kind of stuff. And if you want to sell a lot of copies, there is no such thing. I defy you to point to an exception of a really good selling memoir that was not really deep and honest and truthful and emotionally revealing. There could be biographies that aren't. That's a different thing. I'm talking about a memoir. I would love to see the counterexample. I don't think one exists. And say there might be one. There's definitely memoirs where like some huge celebrity put a memoir on it, sold for a little while, but it doesn't last. Like no one cares, right? Then now there's a third part of the algorithm that is optional, that should not be in every part, but sometimes is going to come up. So what happened? What did you feel? Sometimes you're going to talk about what did you do or learn because of it, right? That shouldn't say do. Taylor, tell me to fix that slide. It just should say, what did you learn because of it? Then or now. So let's be real clear about this. Every experience has its lesson if you're willing to see it. But do not feel pressure to put in a lesson you did not learn or to make a lesson from everything. That does not have to happen. You can write a whole memoir and not at all at once talk about what you learned if you don't want to. Or you can talk about it a lot if that comes up. This is an optional part of the algorithm, not necessary, okay? If you do talk about a lesson, this is really important, and Philip talked about this. Don't point your finger outward and lecture other people about it. This is only what you felt and what you learned, right? It's not about telling other people what they should do, only a record of what you did, what you felt, and what you learned. To be like, this is the difference between here's what you should learn from this versus what I learned is. And that is a huge emotional and energetic difference. It's a massive difference. I mean, the simple language difference. Listen to me if I say, here's what you should do versus here's what I did. It changes everything. If you guys notice, like probably one of the most impactful moments of this, two of them are when I was talking about my memoir and when Quan was talking about how he did his table of truth and what he did. Neither of us were telling you what to do. We were telling you what we did. Do that in your memoir. Okay, so now that you know how to tell each story, you just keep repeating the algorithm. It's that simple. Let's talk about your approach to writing. The first step to writing a book is giving yourself permission to write a mediocre first draft. So when the way to do that, how do you do that? We call it a vomit draft. Quan already talked about this a little bit. What most people call a rough draft or a first draft, we call a vomit draft. Why do we call it that? Because no one cares about looking beautiful when they vomit. They just want to get it out. And that's your only goal with a vomit draft, is just get it out. Get it out of your head, through your fingers or mouth, and onto the page, and that's it. What this means is no stopping or editing as you write. I know this sounds crazy, and you're like, what is he talking about? I'm dead serious. No stopping. Do not stop as you write. Do not edit as you write. Keep going until it's out. And I just mean the vomit draft, right? In fact, say this out. Well, I want you to say this out loud to yourself. We said it all yesterday. We're not doing it today. I will not read or edit my vomit draft until it's done. So now remember, no one will see your vomit draft except you, because you're going to edit it. Even if you know for a fact you're going to show it to, do option 2 or 3 or 4, you're going to show it to other people. I'm going to talk about editing next. Editing will be done before this is done. So don't freaking out. You're the only person who will ever see it. But the way you get to the point where you can edit is you got to do a vomit draft. Now, as you're writing, you're going to be like, oh my God, I hate this. This is terrible. Not just to tell yourself that's future Tucker's problem or future Hal's problem, whatever your name is. Don't say it's my problem, because it's not my problem. It's your problem. But that's future your name's problem. Okay? You're more than welcome as you write, oh, this is terrible. Just mark it as a little note, like a comment in Google Docs, and be like, I got to fix this later. Okay, no big deal. So what if you write, again, the questions we get from people, what if you write the same thing multiple times? That's great. It's how cops get to the truth. I've been interrogated by police multiple times, and whether they're one cop or a good cop, bad cop, they do the same thing. They ask you the same question multiple times, all from different angles at different times, because they're trying to see if you're telling the truth or not. And like the more you change the story, the more they realize you're not. So this is less about truth with memoir than it is about getting the best version of the story and getting the fullest depth of the story, especially with memoir. The more you tell a story, the deeper you're going to go each time. I mean, I know like, because Emily's in the One Last Book group because she's working on her memoir as well as being a facilitator for it. And she writes all the time about how, I went deeper into something I wrote 2 weeks ago, and now it's like a whole new level is uncovered and all that sort of stuff. All right, you can write in strike through if that helps you, so you can't read it. Some people do that. There's also, I know I told you not to buy fancy software. There is one thing called IA Writer that has a thing called focus mode, where it grays out the old stuff and then only bolds the sentence that you're writing on. If you want to, it is available. I'm not saying you need to buy it. If you need another trick, stopping in the middle of a sentence, stop writing in the middle of a sentence when you're done for the day. That way, when you pick up the next day, you can just read that sentence, you know where to start, and you keep going. That way, you're not going to read back. So, I know this sounds crazy. This is tested on thousands of authors. It works, right? Especially, you know this works because how many times have you written something, you sit down to write, and you read what you wrote before, and you spend, all of a sudden it's 2 hours, and you've been editing one sentence the whole time. Yeah, how many times have you done that? God knows I've done that. This avoids that. It stops that, right? It will drive you crazy in a lot of ways, but it's the way you're going to finish your book. Now, why does it work? So there's two big reasons. It suspends self-judgment and subverts anxiety. If you can't read it, you can't judge yourself, at least in the abstract. You can think it's shit, but you don't know until you go back and read it. By the way, Hemingway says first draft of anything is shit. Way it works. It's totally okay. There's no shame in this. Second reason, it creates momentum from daily victories, right? So let me tell you the ceramics grade story. So my point is, the ceramics class, teacher says to half the class, you guys are going to be graded on poundage. At the end of the semester, the total number, or the total weight of the pots, or you're going to be graded on number of pots you throw. So, 100 pots is an A, 90 pots is a B, whatever, right? And then the other side of the class, she says, you're going to be graded on a perfect pot. So make one perfect pot. One flaw is an A, two flaws is a B, etc. So then she goes the whole semester, brings them all back and says, guys, I lied to you. There's only one way to grade. It's by one pot. So bring your best pot up, and then I'll grade it. And so, of course, the side that just threw the hundreds of pots freaks out. But they go check their pots, and they realize they got a bunch of perfect pots. None of the early ones, but a lot of the late ones are perfect. So they all get A's. But the ones who obsessed over one pot over and over and didn't actually practice a bunch, but just obsessed about that one pot, none of them had perfect pots. That's the point, right? The point here is that if you want to actually get a book done, you've got to do it again and again and again, not obsess over one thing. You got to keep writing. The only way you will get the benefits of writing a memoir as well as finishing your book is by not stopping to edit along the way. Katrina, she says, I love when I'm having a bad day. I just remind myself it doesn't matter. It's a vomit draft. I'm allowed to. Makes it so easy to just keep showing up. Sylvie says, the best part is how much I'm enjoying writing. I was killing all the joy by editing as I wrote before. So glad I attended the workshop to learn the fundamentals. These are all real people posting. Like, I didn't prompt them for this. So questions about the vomit draft. Are there anything that came up that you guys saw that we should address right now other than normal anxiety and this is crazy, I can't do it stuff? All right, I guess not. So let's talk about writing principles real quick. Very simple. Short, simple, direct. Sums up into one thing. Clear writing is good writing. This is doubly true for memoir. You will be writing about hard, deep emotional issues. The only way to write about complex emotions is to express them simply. Short, simple, direct. If you need to read a book about this, to believe me, this is the best book about it. It's called The Neon Bible. It is not an instructional book. It is a very short book. It's probably, you can read it in probably 2 or 3 hours. It's not a memoir, but it reads like one. But it's a memoir. It's about a young boy who feels a lot of deep emotional stuff and is confused about a lot of stuff. And it is incredibly deeply moving because it's so simply written and clearly written. If you want to be a clear writer, short, simple, direct, this book will show you how. This book taught me how to write. Simple way to do all this. Another great way is write to one person, right? So Steinbeck says, forget your generalized audience. It'll scare you to death and it doesn't exist. In writing, your audience is one single reader. I found that sometimes it helps to pick out a person, a real person you know, and write to that one. He's right. If you write your memoir to, we're going to talk about this in a second, to one person, it's going to help immensely. Roy H. Williams, greatest living ad writer, said the more specifically you write to one person, the more powerfully you write to everyone. He's right. This is how Tim Ferriss and I wrote 9 best-selling books between us as emails to friends. Like we literally, my book started as emails. They were literally emails. He couldn't find the voice, so he pulled up an email box and started writing his book as an email to friends, and it worked. Speaking to one person is the best way. It makes your book relevant, right? Because then you're telling your story to someone, right? And everyone, listen, if any of you want to really fucking show up and tell me really your true, honest story, I will listen. Like most of you probably heard of Humans from New York. That thing's amazingly popular because that guy gets people to open up and tell their whole story. And so he's got millions of Instagram followers. Also, speaking to one person takes the pressure off of you because now you're just talking to somebody. It's just, I'm telling my story. It's not about, you're not trying to be anything. All right. This is important. That person can be yourself at a younger age. Remember Quan talking about how his table of truth had him? One of the people was him as a younger age. Can totally work. Or anyone in a similar position. His table of truth was the man he killed, his dad, his younger self, and his avatar. Like a dude coming out of prison who didn't know what to do. Or in prison for life sentences. That's about as good as it gets in terms. If you want it to be more than one person, that's fine. That's 4 people, but they're all very tightly aligned, right? Same thing. It's got to be a real person, though. I mean, I get that an avatar is not a real person, but Quan and I talked about this earlier. He's got a specific dude in mind that he was in prison with that he thinks about. All right. Now you know how to write. Let's talk about setting up your docs. I like to put each chapter in its own doc. So if you see this is what my Google Drive would look like, this is not my book. This is some other book. But, like conclusion, chapters, or stories, if you want, all in the same, different docs. It lets me keep things clear, especially if you've got let's say you're going to write 30 stories, put them all in separate docs, write the stories. It helps you do your vomit draft that way because you're just, boom, done. Then you can go back and edit. And then if you decide to put it all together in a manuscript, it's all there. You can piece them together. Be like, oh, I think this goes first and this goes second, et cetera. It makes it really easy. But do what works for you. I'm not saying you have to do that. That's not like the vomit draft of the 250 thing. You can do whatever you want with that. That's just what I do. So who hates typing and wants to speak their book instead? There were a bunch yesterday, like 40%. So I'll go ahead and explain that. It isn't, I'm missing the slide. There's a chapter in here called Using the Scribe Method. It's about 20 pages. It explains it in detail. So you got this book for free. You can download. I'll explain the basic idea to you. So pick a recording app. That's Rev, Temi, Otter.ai. These are all voiced to text apps, right? In some way. Otter.ai is, and Temi are machine learning. Apple has one of the voice to text things on all Apples come on the computer. Rev is a recording app that sends it away to be transcribed. Rev costs like $1 a minute. Temi is like 25 cents a minute. Otter's free for 600 minutes and then something over that. These are just 4. There's a bunch of others. But pick some sort of transcription app. You tell your story verbally as if you're talking to a friend. Then you're going to get a transcript back. And think of that as like the pre-vomit draft, right? You take that, literally put it in a doc right here, put up another doc over here, use that to write the vomit draft version. So don't copy and paste. Don't try and edit the transcript. It doesn't work well. You want to read what you said and then type it out clear. Maybe if what you said is clear, you can copy and kind of edit that, but you'll realize most of what you say is not hardly legible to read. You'll know what you mean though, and then you can write it out really clearly. Yeah, his instructions. So Michael Skye did this. He recorded a bunch of podcasts with a guy who was exact in his avatar, was really excited to hear his stories. He used that podcast as the foundation for his like vomit drop. It worked well. If you want to write by hand, you can. Some people do it. I don't. I'm not saying you need to or you have to. It just works for some people. Should you write sequentially? You're absolutely welcome to. But if you want to change it up, in fact, for memoir, there's a lot of times where you're going to need to change it up. Like the next part of the story you're not able to write, you're not feeling it, just go to a different part. It's fine. What if you start writing something and you realize something's off about your book? That happens. In fact, not only is it okay, it's a gift. Why is it a gift? Because writing a memoir is a process. We've talked about this over and over. It results in you uncovering deep and hidden truths. So writing is often discovery. Right? The writing process is a discovery process. It's, in my experience, writing is a very effective way to realize when I'm confused and to get clarity. It's a forcing function for clear thinking and feeling. Also, writing forces you to bring up and feel deep emotions, which a lot of you said, this is the reason you're doing this. Okay? It's a guidepost to where your healing wants to happen. Taylor, tell me to correct that. Not where your healing wants to happen.